from me. Take me out to the black. Tell 'em I ain't coming back. Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me.
Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the vote from me. There's no place I can't be since I found democracy. And my favorite line from that entire series, yeah, I fought on the losing side, but I'm still not convinced it was the wrong side. Hi, everybody. My name is Chad Lupkes, and I'm a grassroots activist in North Seattle. I'd like to thank Uphill Media and their volunteer crew for producing this relaunch of Chad Talks With. If you can, please go to Patreon/Uphill Media to show your support. We're doing great work, and I know they're doing a lot of other shows as well. My goal for this series of shows is to engage, inspire, educate, and empower the activists who make up the political revolution and the Democratic Party in Washington State and beyond. As we're talking, please use the hashtag #ChadTalksWith and share the show on your social media feeds. Let's build the audience and help grow the show. This is just the beginning. My first guest tonight is Tina Podlodowski, the current chair of the Washington State Democratic Central Committee. She was a candidate for Washington Secretary of State in 2016 and held a Seattle City Council position during the 1990s. Between these two, she was a leader in the nonprofit sector and issue advocacy, building large and active activist organizations. Tina, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Chad. Yeah, it's great to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. I think it's a terrific opportunity to connect so many people across the state and frankly across the country who are interested in activism.
Frankly, across the country, indeed. In fact, one of the hosts for one of the other shows is actually in Germany. So it's not just across the country. This is global.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I mentioned that you were really active in the nonprofit sector and issue advocacy. Can you tell us what else you were involved in between your time on the Seattle City Council and your run for Secretary of State in 2016?
Sure, you bet. There were two large nonprofits that I ran. One was Lifelong AIDS Alliance, which is the biggest AIDS service provider in the Pacific Northwest. And it was really looking at issues related to HIV/AIDS and healthcare in general in this country and trying to move us towards a healthcare system that takes care of everyone, particularly people dealing with life-threatening and life-challenging illnesses as well. Big brothers, big sisters, so mentoring, and also looking at communities that are struggling with help and support around a variety of different issues. But I was also one of the founders of the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility, looking to put in place sensible gun laws, not take away people's Second Amendment rights, but sensible gun laws here in Washington State. And then also the work around Washington's paramount duty, which is about making sure that Washington education was fully funded for all of our kids in the K through 12 system. And that's something the state legislature is still fighting today. So there's an opportunity to be an issue advocate, to work to build nonprofits, to run for elected office, and even become, I guess, a party chair and maybe even a party hack then, I guess, as a result of it. But political activism spans the gamut of things that folks can do. But the most important word in that is active, to get up and do something.
Yeah, get something anywhere. It doesn't matter whether it's internal party, the inside path, or issue advocacy, which is what I call the outside path. As long as people are engaged in something that grabs their attention and fires their imagination and makes them feel like they're having an impact, that's what we need to see. That's what we want to see all over the place.
You bet.
Talking about the inside infrastructure, the inside path there, the Democratic Party appropriately is mostly focused on electoral infrastructure. Having an understanding of the entire map of options is really important for people to get involved. What is the best way for someone who advocates for an issue like single payer or climate change action, Washington's paramount duty, etc.? How can they get involved in a way that'll make them feel like their efforts are having an impact?
I think there's a bunch of different ways to get involved if they want to get involved in the Democratic Party, because obviously outside of the party, there's a ton of different groups, from the indivisible groups that have formed to the groups that have formed around the Women's March, to groups that have come together in those issue action areas. But in connecting with the party, the different issues caucuses that we have that are there. For example, the Progressive Caucus is a great place for folks to be a part of. But around issues caucuses related to labor, for example, or disabilities issues, that's one place. Another place is through our Democratic district organizations. And we have 49 different district organizations, 39 different county organizations. A lot of those groups also work on things specific to what a city is doing, what a county is doing, in addition to what the state legislature is doing. And I have to say, I have a bias as a former city council member. I think that cities and counties are the places where innovation is happening in terms of legislation and different policies. So doing the work at city and county levels allows those issues to be brought up to state legislatures and to eventually to Congress in making that happen. And then you can be parts of things like our state committee statewide. And those are folks who are elected from their district and county organizations to serve and work at a statewide level. So there's all different places that folks can plug in that are not campaigns. And then on top of that, there's also campaigns, whether it's a city council race, a county council race, races that we have going on that are special elections in 2017 here in Washington state for legislative district seats. And then the gamut that are, again, here in Western states, in the Western United States, we have initiative campaigns, and those are issue-based campaigns too. So there's a lot of places people can plug in.
Yeah, you'll be happy to know that King County last night at the executive board meeting added appointed positions to the list of things that we want to recruit people for. So the municipal boards and commissions within King County for the cities and counties, that is now a defined role of the electoral infrastructure of King County to find people to fill those spots, because that's how we're going to build the farm team across the entire state. So I hope we'll see the same thing from the elections committee at the state level.
That would be terrific. I think people forget that there are literally hundreds of thousands of elected and appointed offices throughout the entire country here in the United States. Yeah. You know, it's everything from fire districts to human rights commissions to public utilities districts to city councils and those efforts. So there are plenty of places that people can plug in. And when you think about politics, it's not just thinking about what happens at the federal level. In fact, all of these other things are far more important to the daily lives of people in the United States in a lot of different ways than sometimes the federal government can be. Although I would say that the federal government has some challenges right now. So I know that a lot of our efforts are being focused there, and we're looking at that, but we should not give up all of these other efforts for state and local offices.
We shouldn't give up. And honestly, as important as Washington, D.C. is, it's always been such a distraction in the national media about what's going on, who said what today, and what kind of arguments are taking place in hearings and things like that. But like you said, local, state, county, municipal, that's where so much of our tax dollars go. And those are the areas where those government levels have direct impact on how we live, especially if you're talking school boards, because we've got kids in school, or our local hospital districts. How would they implement the change in the ACA if it ever comes down again? Things like that. So having the right people and having the right citizen engagement at that local level is critical.
Absolutely.
But I want to get back to the State Central Committee a little bit. We've had quite the seismic shift in Washington in the membership of the State Central Committee. I think it's the largest change in at least 20 years. How optimistic are you that the state party is capable of harnessing all of that new energy that has come in? And what kind of projects do you have for the subcommittees to focus on over the next few months and the few years?
Well, I think it's pretty terrific. I mean, I have said that the unifying principle for the Washington State Democratic Party now is that activism is the energy that drives our party. So if you look at the composition of our state committee, and that's 178 different folks who are elected from legislative districts and county districts into those positions, we have had a tremendous change. About 70% of the folks serving on the state committee are new and are relatively new to politics and come in with this great fresh energy and this great attitude that says, you know what, we can figure out a way to make this happen. We don't always have to follow the past, and we can make these things work. So a couple of the things that we've de-emphasized, the state party has always been a place where we've been talking about sort of rules and process, and we want to make sure that rules and process that they're there, that it works effectively, but that's not the sole function of the state committee, is to figure out rules and process. In fact, one of the charges that I've given to the committee, the rules committee, is to figure out how to make the processes streamlined. How do we spend less time arguing over things like something in Robert's Rules of Order and more time doing things on the ground that make a difference to campaigns and for us winning different seats in different places. The resolutions committee, we're looking to streamline that process so that we can actually take a look at a whole bunch of different issues and then make sure that the issues are followed up on. We bring in resolutions to the state committee, and we want to make sure that we're holding elected officials accountable, and various elected bodies accountable when we have those resolutions in place. But really what's exciting is having a communications and training committee, because a lot of what the Democratic Party stands for really is not communicated particularly well to folks around the country, and it's certainly around the state of Washington. So looking at those kinds of issues, making sure that we've got consistent training in place for our precinct committee officers, for our legislative district chairs, our county chairs, and for anyone else who wants to get engaged as an activist, is something we haven't done before. The same thing with having an elections committee that's really charged with looking at every legislative district and saying, what are your priorities in various years, and how can the state party make sure to help? Whether you're looking at somebody who's running in a public utilities district or a city council race or a legislative district race, or, is it a Senate race or something? Let's work on all of those things together in an effective way. We're also doing something that I think is very different for state parties around the country, and that's trying to run and build a state party that's people-powered and is not beholden to corporate money or large donors in a significant way, but it's really built on $3 a month donations, $7 a month donations, 14, and then that magic $27 a month donation kind of component as well. And we've started a new club called the Resistance to be able to do that. I'm really excited at how many people have taken advantage of that and how many folks are putting their money in and feeling a stake in the party. And then the party needs to be accountable back to folks. And that's something as state party chair, I don't think that we've done a great job in the previous 10 years, frankly, as a party, is telling the folks who are supporting and working and helping with the party as donors, as volunteers, as activists, hey, here's what the party is putting back in so you can see exactly where your dollars are going, where your effort is going. So all of these things comprise, I think, a very exciting time. And then also focusing in on places like Eastern Washington, where we haven't spent a lot of time in the last 10 years, and it's way past time to make that happen and have it be more effective as well for us all here in the state. So it's a state committee that's really active, that has committees that are active, that has folks who are working together in between meeting times. And I'm really excited we can turn all that activism into electoral wins up and down the ticket.
So let's go a little bit more into the Resistance. I know that you launched it just a week or so ago. Let's bring some of the images up on the screen while you talk about the merchandise. And also a specific question here. As much as we need to stop the current federal administration, we also need to present a viable and inspiring alternative. So can we look forward to seeing the focus of the efforts from our state party change from just resisting to actually transforming and changing? What can you tell us about the resistance movement and how that fundraising effort will translate into visible changes on the ground across the state? And let's bring up some of the images that you sent to us showing the hat and things like that. So John will take care of that while you're talking.
So one of the things that we haven't done is to put on the ground organizers around the state of Washington 365 days a year, 24/7. Every 2 years we build up this coordinated campaign structure around the big campaigns, whether they're gubernatorial races, Senate races, presidential races. We spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of effort, we spend a lot of money to get organizers on the ground. And then the day after Election Day, we shut it all down. And all these relationships and all of this great data and all of this work that we've done together goes dormant for another year until we cycle it back up again. So the whole idea is to be organizing as a political party 365 days of the year, 24/7. So every dollar from the Resistance goes to one of two places. It either goes into hiring and funding organizers for the state party, We've just, as a result of folks joining the resistance, been able to hire an organizing director and 2 new organizers for the party. We hope to hire 1 more this year too. So if you're interested, please send us a few bucks to do that. And then monies to go into local party organizations, particularly in places where folks may not have a built-in fundraising base. For example, in Seattle, some of our local party organizations do a great job of fundraising for their activities, for voter drives, for voter reg drives. But in places like Asotin County, Garfield County, other sorts of places around the state, folks might need some help and some dollars to make that happen. That's exactly what the resistance is for, is to make sure that we're building that infrastructure around the entire state of Washington. So the resistance is a first step, because first you resist and then you rise. And so that's a component of making sure that we are doing the work, not just to resist and say, no, stop, we're going to stop what's happening as a result of the current occupant of the White House, but what are we going to do to send out a positive message and show what we're for, not just what we're against? And that's a whole big piece of building this organizing structure, being able to work with folks and be there where they are and meet them where they are. I want a Democratic Party that's not just asking for your vote once every 2 years or once every 4 years. I want a Democratic Party that's standing with you at a Black Lives Matter march, at a healthcare march, where you're fighting for your kids' schools all of the time. And that's the whole point of having this organizing infrastructure, because ultimately that's what the Democratic Party stands for, is working people, working families around the state of Washington, really building and focusing in on that middle class and opportunity for all. So that's something I feel as though the party has walked away from its roots a little bit. I certainly felt that in this past presidential campaign, and it's time to bring it back and be a party of the 99%, not that 1%.
So you launched this last week. How has fundraising been going?
The fundraising has been just going kind of gangbusters. We had a very few folks who were giving us money on a monthly basis, and something called the Dem Club when I started as party chair 2 months ago. Now we're up to over 1,000 people who are giving us close to $15,000 a month in ongoing donations, and in $3 and $7 donations, which is amazing when you think about it. It's absolutely amazing. Our hope is by the end of the year, we get to $25,000 a month. That would pay for lots of organizers and money going into those local party organizations. And we will be showing it back every month with stories from the resistance, from this group, that will go back into those donors and throughout the state of Washington, so that you can see, if you give us $3, here's what we're doing on the ground in Yakima. Here's what we're doing in Bellingham. Here's what we're doing, in Ritzville or some other place, to make sure that your dollars are being used wisely. I think that that's part of the compact of you give us your money, you've got to see that it's being used for something that you care about.
Okay. So we are having some questions come in from the audience, and I see one that I want to address.
Yeah.
She goes into specific, but I don't know that we want to deal with specific incidents, but let me put it this way. I deal with every day with the struggle within the Democratic Party, and I think the dynamics go far beyond just Hillary supporters versus Bernie supporters or experienced versus new blood. Without going into those specific examples, we know that what I call the 2016 hangover is a real thing, and it's having an impact and an effect on our local efforts to recruit candidates, build our communities, and move forward. Again, without going into the specifics and the individuals, what advice would you give to people on all sides of these divides within our party so we can properly and effectively build bridges and accomplish our goals together?
I don't think that this is something that you do just in one step. I think this is something that you do to build a relationship with somebody who believes as you do that you want to make positive, progressive change. And I think of this as a step in the relationship. 2016 was a year of a lot of hurt, a lot of misinformation, a lot of things that happened that people have strong feelings about. And we have to acknowledge those feelings. And one of the best ways to acknowledge those feelings is to listen and to really apologize for things that happened around those things. I think that that's incredibly important. People were dismissed on all sides of issues around a variety of different things. There was name calling. There were so many other things. So you have to start from that place. It's, for example, Chad, you're my friend. And if I did something to make you feel bad, well, you know what? I would want to listen to how you felt. I would want to acknowledge how you felt about that. I would want to say, I'm sorry. And then say, how do we move forward and build something new together? And I think we have to come from that really honest place to be able to do that and not name call, not be dismissive, not hold on to the past. And you know what? We're not going to be perfect. We're going to stumble as we work through this. But what I've seen is it's taking time, and people are listening to each other. They're acknowledging, they're willing to listen to each other's stories about things that happened in the past that were so painful because people cared. They cared about wanting to make progressive change. And I don't care where you fell on the spectrum. That's the overarching issue. People really, really cared about wanting to make change. And so it's important to listen to those stories, to acknowledge those feelings, and then to move forward together in making that happen. Again, this is not something that you get over in a day or a week, or in some cases, even a year or two, but you have to be willing to engage on a very human level about that. And I'm trying to model that well as state party chair, to listen to people's stories, to spend time with people, to acknowledge how they're feeling, and then say, okay, we've done that. Now, how can we take a step forward together to move that to a more progressive and positive place? And I think we all have to do that work together.
I think one of the issues that we dealt with last year is having so many new people come in without an understanding of how the process worked, or even as important, how the process was developed. People came in and they were told, well, this is how you do things, and they weren't told why. And they weren't told any stories of the experiences of the people who developed these procedures. And so everything seemed crazy. Everything seemed like it was bent against this or that, when in fact, it was usually designed to be middle of the road so that things didn't go completely off the rails.
Right.
I dealt with that quite a bit. And I remember your launch party at the Paramount Theater. You had language in your speech and the speeches of the people introducing you from both the Bernie campaign and the Hillary Clinton campaign to say, you know what? This is not one of those campaigns. You want to bring everybody together. What I've seen is you do the same thing as the state party chair, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. But it's not an either or in that context, and I think it's really listening to all parts, and not just listening even to folks who identify as Democrats as well. I think we have tremendous progressive leaders who probably would not put a Democratic label on themselves. And that's okay. When I think of our big tent as a party, I think it's a big tent that includes people who wouldn't identify themselves as Democrats, but ultimately we're all moving in the same direction for positive progressive change. And I have faith that as they look at the different candidates and make their choices about who they might want to vote for, if it comes down to they should look at the Democrats. I want them to look at the Democrats and make that happen in doing it. But let's acknowledge all of those voices too, because we're only going to get better if we listen to people. I always said when I was a city council member, I tried to listen a heck of a lot harder and with a lot more empathy and understanding to the people who disagreed with me than the people who agreed with me. Because the people who agreed with me, I knew the position. The people who disagreed with me, they were going to push me in different ways. They might push me to a place of my being angry, and I needed to look at that anger and why was I getting angry about that. They would push me in ways that would expand a policy position and frankly make it better. So let's have those conversations in a really civil way. Sometimes your voice is going to get a little loud. That's okay. We yell at our friends and we're like, what are you doing? That's nuts. And have those conversations, but let's get back together around those issues too.
So before we move off of this topic, how do people who have specific issues that they see, that they have with what they see, are you setting up an ombudsman or something like that?
Yes.
And how do people reach out to you directly to be able to say, I see this happening, I don't like it, I don't understand it. Can you help me either understand or deal with it, because this is becoming a real problem?
Yeah, you bet. We've asked our the state committee level, the affirmative action and committee to take a look at this and to look at setting up an ombudsman process, as well as a little bit of a code as to how to deal with these kinds of situations, how to deal with it locally, and then if it gets too hot or if it's too big an issue, how you can move that into an ombudsman situation to facilitate those conversations as well. Also, the state party is incredibly open in terms of being able to help with that. And I would encourage folks to email me or call. I am more than happy to do that, route to different people who can help with those conversations. But I also want to hear about it too as state party chair. You know, our state party is not so big that I can't be hearing about these things. And it's really, really important for me to know that these discussions are happening and how people are treating each other and working with each other on these issues. Because usually, if they can't come to a resolution, it points to a bigger problem that needs my attention anyway, and we should be working on all of these different things. But I also do some training as well for chairs and other folks on conflict resolution, because a lot of the times people are just talking right past each other, that they're saying things that if they could just catch the communication, they would recognize they have more in common than they have in disparate ways of dealing with things.
Okay, so in the frame of, or in the idea that bringing other people into the party, let's talk about this one. We've got Indivisible all over the place. We've got Sister District and so many other grassroots organizations that are growing out of the new progressive movement. You asked a question during a panel at the DNC reorganization at the end of February. I'd like to bring up the clip and watch you ask this question, and then I want to find out what has been the result of that. So let's watch that clip.
Also, from Washington, please. Thank you. My name is Tina Podlodowski. I'm the new chair of the Washington State Democrats. One of the 6, I think, state chairs that have come in on a very progressive wave in the last few months. With 70% of our state party being brand new. So here's the thing, you know, it sucks to go after the great Barbara Lee and try to talk about your own millennial chops, but I was 30 when I first ran for a city council seat, and I got no help from the party. In fact, I could do it. And I won a Seattle City Council at-large seat with 65% of the vote. Okay? So there are folks out there who have that experience. My challenge and question to anyone who wants to answer it is, as a state party chair, we are in the process of changing our state parties. When you look at these distributed organizing models and how they have to work, this is what is the future of our particular party. So I want to ask you how you have been engaging with state parties, or can we put together a council, maybe of those 6 state parties, maybe more, to make sure that we're implementing this in states and we're trying things out. One of the most frustrating things I have is around a variety of different issues where we're reinventing the wheel on some things. And all of us are shaking our heads because we're doing it. We got people doing apps, we got people doing training, we got people trying to figure out the most effective way to connect people in with races. And I've got in Washington State, I don't have one, but I've got 6 different special elections coming up in 2017 that could use help. I also have, and I'm sure other chairs around here do too, a multiplicity of races at the municipal level coming up in 2017 that should be filled by first-time candidates and people under the age of 35. I completely believe in that. So I want to know how you can sort of visualize or think about formalizing this. And then, Alicia, I know you're coming in March to Seattle with my friend Eric Liu, so we want to suck you over to do something for the Democratic Party if we can for a minute. So I'll put that plug in now. So let's talk about how to formalize this in some way, shape, or form. What do you guys think? Andy, Ravi, Andy.
So that question was fantastic. I was watching it live. What kind of feedback have you gotten from those organizations that were on the panel and others that have been moving into, well, here's the thing, they haven't been moving into Washington. People within Washington have been grabbing for any opportunity to get involved. Indivisible North Seattle has a couple hundred people that show up every single week. I attended a new one in Kirkland and Kenmore. We've got them popping up all over the place. So what are we doing to connect and work with all these groups so we can unite in time for the August primary and the November election? What kind of contacts have you had?
Sure, it's been great. So we've had some contact and have been doing some work with both the Knock Every Door folks as well as the Sister District folks. And Dylan Kate, our new organizing director, has put together weekly calls with the various folks to talk about the efforts that they're doing and to how we can feed in to make this happen. I've also met with the women who organized the Seattle Women's March, who are also part of a lot of the different indivisible groups as well. And what we're trying to work on is a congress, essentially, of all of these organizations, where people can come together, where they can have these kinds of conversations, where we can see the work that folks are doing, and is there work that we can all do together that, irrespective of party, benefits the kinds of folks that we want to see elected to office. And we sort of settled in on this summer of canvas, where basically this is something I'm calling for this summer for our entire state party to do, and just get help from other organizations that we can work with. And it's a summer of canvas to essentially knock every door, call all the folks, make sure we've got great voter data around the state of Washington so that we can turn people out in these special elections as well as in 2018 in a bunch of these other elections. And I think we've also gotten interest from folks who are interested in a particular issue area, particularly around issues related to either Medicare for all or single payer, somewhere in that area, who also want to see what we can do to get folks engaged around this. So little by little, we are coming together in these areas. We're also working with a great group called Open Progress in San Francisco that's building a bunch of data tools that would help move this agenda forward as well. And so we're looking to be a beta site for Open Progress, and then also to help them with their efforts in a couple other parties too. So little by little, we're starting to make this happen. I know that I'm speaking to a lot of different folks who are part of indivisible groups. They're cropping up all over the place, as well as Dylan doing that, as well as many other folks within the party. But I love this idea of having a Congress, literally, of hundreds of organizations who can come together, hear from each other, see the work that's out there, and then move forward together, because we don't all have to move under one banner to make the work happen. And in many ways, moving forward under disparate banners is the best way to get the work done, as opposed to moving forward as one thing. I want to be a part of this great progressive movement. I don't think the entire movement needs to fall under the Democratic Party to be successful.
Okay. We do have a couple specific questions from the audience. One, what are we doing specifically in Eastern Washington? People have been feeling ignored out there, and we want to know what we are doing and what we're planning to do over the next 2 years in Eastern Washington.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just came back from the weekend in Eastern Washington and the Foley dinner there, and meeting with 40 different folks around a 10-county strategy for Eastern Washington. So there's a couple of things that are happening right now in 2017 that are really interesting in Eastern Washington. The first thing is Legislative District 7 has 2 special elections, one for a Senate seat and then one for a House seat. We have not run a Democratic candidate in Legislative District 7 in Washington State in over a decade. Crazy. We need to be running candidates in each of these races. So
what was it that you said? Every race, every place?
Every race, every place. We've got to run everywhere in the state of Washington. In the last cycle in 2016, if you look at the state house races and the state senate races, we didn't run in 20 of those races.
I know.
We just ceded the races to the Republicans. And you know what? In Eastern Washington, we have done that year after year after year to the disservice of the people of Eastern Washington. So no more. So we found 2 great candidates. We've got a whole group of folks who are out there vetting that and putting together a rural strategy that we think is a great test strategy for that legislative district and, frankly, for the entire state of Washington. LD7 is 420 square miles. It's anywhere from 1 mile to 5 miles between houses, so you're not going to be doing a lot of door knocking. No. And the big population, and it spans 5 counties: Okanagan County, Stevens County, Ferry County, Pend Oreille County, Spokane County. So it's a different way of doing things and a different group of messaging. So working on that together, and then using that in a lot of the other county strategy as well, and local races. Okay. Plus, it's really exciting. We've got a great bunch of congressional candidates looking to take on Kathy McMorris Rogers too, so stay tuned for that one as well.
Yeah, and not just Kathy, but we've got people in the 3rd. We've got incredible infrastructure building in the 8th, and even the 4th is really starting to pay attention to what the local races are and what can
Absolutely.
happen. Because that's what's
Absolutely.
important, is what can happen if we really put our minds to it. So I want to thank you for staying a little extra time. We wanted to
Sure.
keep this to a half hour. I will leave a closing statement for you, and we'll go from there.
Well, you know what? I think if folks are looking at a place where they can spend their volunteer time, if they have a few dollars, take a look at the Democratic Party. But if it's the Democratic Party or Indivisible or another local group, just get involved. I mean, activism is the energy that drives our party, but activism is the way to get change happening, to get progressive change happening here in Washington State. We have great legislative districts. We have great county organizations. We'd love to have you join the resistance, but more than anything else, look for a place and look for the issues that matter most to you and get involved. And I just want to thank you, Chad, as well. You have been doing this work for years. I know that you've been a big part of the changes that we've seen here happen in the Democratic Party, and I'm utterly grateful to have you be a part of that. And I hope you're feeling good about the direction that the party is going and making that happen. We have an opportunity, folks. You know, I think this is a tremendous opportunity in Washington State to make change. I'm the first female party chair in 25 years. My vice chair, Joe Pacotis, first Native American in leadership ever in the Washington State Party. If you look at our state committee and the 178 people that are a part of it, they're all amazing people in their own right, but together they make up quite a force. So I'm excited to be a Washington Democrat right now, and I hope you'll join us.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to, again, thank my producer, John Ellis, and Laura Livengood, and the rest of the team at Uphill Media for being willing to bring my show back. And we would also like to put a shout out to Reader Supported News, who will be covering the People's Summit in Chicago live on this channel from June 9th through June 11th. You'll be able to watch that live broadcast all 3 days right here. Next week, my guest will be a fellow veteran and a fellow delegate for Bernie Sanders to the 2016 Democratic National Convention, and a candidate for the 3rd Congressional District of Washington, Dorothy Gasquet. I hope you can join us. Going out this time,
Hang on, Chad.
Okay, John.
I just want to say, hey, Tina, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I was blown away by what you had to say, and I'm really excited to be doing this show again. But I'm looking at what the audience is saying in chat, and you guys can't see me, but thank you very much for coming on. You did an amazing job, and really, really appreciate that. Here, I'll put Chad back on, but thanks. All right, Chad, now you can go out. You were
cool.
Just wanted to throw
Thanks,
it.
John. I really want to thank you for the work that you've done over the last 2 years. And you went through a learning curve, and it is really paying off. And I really appreciate the work that you continue to do. So let's go out with this video. Just over a year ago, the Washington State Precinct caucuses showed the strength of a grassroots movement. And as I said back then, we were just getting started. I'd like to roll out this first show with a video that was put together by Carissa Milgrove from Vancouver, who just last week asked the people on her feed to send her self-portraits with signs saying what they'd run for and what they'd achieved since March 26th, 2016. I will see you guys next week, and let's roll.
Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, they're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. While they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds whisper. Poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Don't you know you better run, 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 talking about a revolution. Yes, finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution. Oh no. Talking about a revolution. Oh, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation.